So you made a New Year's resolution to get out of debt. And, you get a couple weeks into the new year and then it all seems to unravel. You made the budget. You did what they told you to because they said you need to budget your money because clearly you're an irresponsible adult. If you're not doing what they say, you're probably screwing up. But the fact is that most people will fail at a budget. While budgets are great, they're just kind of like a guideline to keep you somewhere in check, but they're not always made in a way that works with our minds and works with our lives. So the fact that budgets fail so often really isn't surprising, but I know why they fail, and I have a few ways to make them work. Well, kind of work. Essentially, I don't want you to budget anymore. I want you to give up on the whole idea of making a budget. What I want you to do is decide what you need, what you want, and then taking your money to do those things. You have to decide what's important to you and then make it work from there. So I'm going to explain to you the 6 reasons why budgets fail. And then we're going to go through some action steps that you can take in order to not necessarily have a budget, but have an idea of how to spend your money and how to deal with issues that take you away from using your money efficiently. So if it sounds good, keep watching. First off, reason number 1 that budgets fail, it's that you don't know how much you actually need. Now, a lot of times people will try to make a budget based off of their income or maybe what they spent out the previous month. But the fact is that sometimes income's very little. What you spend every month will vary. And you're not getting a whole picture of what you've been spending out. So then you end up cutting yourself short and you're bound to fail almost immediately. Reason number 2, you don't actually count everything. So this kind of goes along with number 1. If you pay your, say, car insurance twice a year and it wasn't last month and you don't really think of it, or when you pay it, you put it on a credit card. So, that's like above and beyond what your normal monthly income is. Well, now you're kind of screwed up. So if you're not counting things, maybe you're not counting some birthdays or, kids' parties or things that come up, you are technically aware of them. It's just not a thought. You are going to end up cutting yourself short. Then we have number 3, which is the things that we completely did not think of. So this could be something like a tire blows out, and you get a nail in it and you have to get it replaced. Okay, you were not expecting that. That was completely out of anything for your normal spending. You have to build something in for these things because unfortunately they are going to pop up and sometimes they're costly. So we need to end up buffering in more money for these type of things. And even though it's not money necessarily that's going out every month, we want to set aside money for these type of things every single month. I know, not always easy and maybe not a position that you're in right away, but those are kind of the things that we need to work on there. Then 4 is that you have cut way too much. So a lot of times people think, I am going to get out of debt. I am going to cut myself to the bare bones. I am going to only spend on what is absolutely necessary. And then what they do is they over deprive themselves and make themselves completely unhappy. They end up hating everything. They're miserable. And when you have that happen and your dopamine crashes, you are going to end up going the other way and you're going to overspend. And budget, nobody cares about a budget at that point, right? So cutting too much can actually make it way worse than even underestimating what you needed. Then we have number 5, and this is where you're not dealing with things like emotional stress, say ADHD, depression, you're bipolar, you're OCD, you have some kind of mental or emotional issue, and these things cause people to not act rationally, obviously, and they end up making choices that are more spur of the moment and not in line with what they already said they wanted. And it happens so quickly with these impulses that it throws everything off and can do it really fast. And unfortunately, can do it in a massive way. It could be a total swing, and you could, go in the hole just from that, let alone just being off your budget a little. So dealing with those is something we'll talk about. Then we have number 6, which is that you don't make enough money. There's a lot of people, when they go back and they look at what they've actually been spending out, that they're living off their credit cards more than they realize. Maybe they had money saved aside, at one point, and now they've gone through it all. So these are the things that are kind of a problem, because if you're not making enough money, the budget's never going to help you. It just doesn't matter. So now we have some action steps. Okay, action step number 1 is that you're going to go through the last 12 months of bank statements and credit card statements, and you're going to add up everything that you've actually paid out on. There is going to be a little bit of an overlap and a little extra, because obviously if you use credit cards, you use that to do your main purchases, and then in your bank statements you'll show the payments being made to the credit cards, which technically kind of cover whatever you paid for. Now you're going to have to judge if you put all of your purchases on there and then pay it off right away. Well, then don't count your credit card payments, but that's not most of us. So I really kind of want you to leave that in and not deduct anything, even though there's a little overlap, because that actually helps you build a little more of a cushion. Now, if it's huge, you can maybe, deduct 25% of the total credit card payments. But for the most part, if you add up everything and have a total across all accounts that you use, and then divide by 12, that's going to give you how much that you average out per month. Then action step number 2 is that when you're going through all of this, I want you to be sure that you're not saying, oh, I've just done this once, or I did that once. That was just the kids' thing this time. But then 3 months later, you have another thing. Or, like I said, with the tire. These things all add up. So anything that was in there that you're thinking, oh, I should deduct that because that doesn't normally happen. Well, there's a lot of things that don't normally happen, and you're going to want to leave those in. And that, again, builds your cushion. Then action step number 3 is that we are not going to cut everything. We are going to cut the right things. If you're trying to get out of debt and you're trying to build a spending plan, let's only cut out the things that that you're not going to need. So say, you use your Netflix, but you don't use your Hulu anymore. Well, cut that, right? If you know that you can maybe reduce a payment, say you've got an extra line on your cell phone bill, right? Your kid's still on there. You're like, hey, you can pay for your own. I'm going to cut you out. Whatever you want to do. Those little type of things like that, we're going to cut where it's not necessary. Maybe instead of, buying the really expensive name brands paper towels, we're going to buy the store brand, right? You're going to save where you can. We're not going to cut out things entirely. We're going to make the right cuts because, again, like we said, which is our next action step, don't deprive yourself. Don't make this overly cut to where you're feeling unhappy and depressed with the situation. Because if you're starting to feel down, you're going to want to give yourself something. You're going to say, well, I've, stuck to my budget for the last 2 weeks. I deserve something. I had a bad day at work. I deserve something. I got snowed in this work today. I'm bored. I want to buy something. Those type of things, we have to try to alleviate those behaviors. And the only way to do that is to not deprive ourselves from the beginning, but instead we're actually going to buffer in free money that is meant for those types of things. So if you had a bad day, you're like, oh, how much free money do I have? What was planned for? I've got an extra $20 I can spend today. What can I do? Right? I don't care if it's going to Starbucks or if it's buying something, stupid cheap off of Amazon and you're like, oh, I can get that same day delivery. Great. Anything that can make you feel really good in that moment when you're feeling down, we need to pre-plan for those times. So that's going to get worked into what our money is going towards. And you have to decide what that is for you. Maybe some people are like, I'm tight. I've got $5 a month. That's all I'll do. Or other people are like, I can do $100 a month and I'm okay as long as I have that to spend. Whatever it is for you, you have to decide. But you have to be able to build in something so that you're not depriving yourself, because look, we didn't overcut. We made places for these things to be there because you're not going to feel deprived. You're going to feel like, I'm working, I'm living my life, and I deserve to do the things I want to do, but they have to be accounted for. Then we have the next action step, which goes back to any kind of emotional or mental problems that you're dealing with. So if you are having some kind of depression, bipolar, OCD, ADHD, any kind of stress in your life that you can't deal with, and you are going to overspending as a problem, you need to get some kind of help with that, because trying to decide where your money goes is never going to help you. You're just going to keep falling back into the same habits and the same behaviors unless you get somebody who can actually help you. And unfortunately, I can give you ideas. I can tell you what most people can do. But if you're in that particular situation, I am not any kind of professional to help you there. Unfortunately, I'd love to say that I was, but go get that help, because then once you have that taken care of, everything else can start working better. We can start getting you in a position where you can take the right action steps, but you have to do the hard work first of getting that professional help. Then our next action step is going to be that we are going to prep and plan ahead as much as we can to avoid any of the last minute tasks or like impulse purchases. So a lot of times, say, the easiest way to think of this, right? Food. So if you're not planning and prepping your meals, you're more likely to go out to fast food, or, you stop at the grocery store to get something, and next thing you know, there's impulse purchases that are not food related, but there's something there, and you end up overspending what you originally planned. So if we can plan and prep something and have something ready for those days where it's like, there is no time and I didn't technically prep, but maybe something's in the freezer or the fridge that was done a couple days ago. So you've got something you've got to go to, and you're not going to end up overspending. This is very difficult, and difficult for a lot of us, and we do it time and time again. I know I am very guilty of this, of saying, I'm going to plan, I'm going to prep. Even when I do, I get a couple of days in, and then next thing you know, it unravels, and I just keep starting over. And that's all you can do, is just keep starting over, right? You do your best where you are so that you can pick yourself back up and just keep getting back at it. Just because it doesn't work, or only works for a couple days or a week or maybe a month, and then it falls apart, you know what to do. You can try it again. Maybe you need to tweak something, but the planning and prepping is just a game changer. If you can get it under control and you can get going, you can really make a huge difference in those impulse and last minute purchases. Okay, this one is a biggie. This is a huge action step, and you're probably going to hate me for it. But it just could be that you don't make enough money and you've got to make more. And that's not easy. It's never easy to change jobs. It's never easy to find something else to do. But you need to look at where you truly are. And if you have more money going out than you have coming in perpetually, something's got to change. If you can't cut anymore, then you absolutely have to find a way to make more money. Now, if you've been watching, you see that I am working on the 0 to $1 million in a year challenge, and I will be having information about different ideas that you can do on the side so that we can start making more money for you. We're not talking millions immediately, but a little bit to get you going, to get you to where things aren't as tight. They're going to help you to get your budget, I hate the word, your spending in check, because if you have enough money coming in, it makes it easier to control what's going out. So if you are interested in the challenge and you want to watch, you can subscribe and follow to get all that information. But I have one last action step, And this one is easy, and I'm giving it to you for free. So if you click the link below, you're going to have access to my free dissolved debt course. This is going to help you get everything in line so that you can actually pay off your debts faster. You can get your credit score up. You can build an emergency fund, and you can get a month ahead on your bills. And that is a whole lot, and that does not happen immediately. But if you have a framework and some guidelines and some ideas on what you can do, that makes all the difference. So I want you to stop budgeting per se and start having a plan for your money and decide where it's going to go so that it is fulfilling your needs because you worked for it. You put the time in. You deserve to not have to live a life that feels like it's not worth it, right? Money affects every single aspect of our lives. And when it's not flowing properly, everything feels like it's falling apart. So I want you to be able to have a new year where you feel like things are starting to flow in the right direction. So go through this again if you need to. Don't worry about rewatching why they fail, right? You got the gist of it. And you already have experienced that, budgets don't really work. But go back over and think about the different things that I've said about what you can do and see where you can make that work for you. Go through dissolved debt. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of information there. It is information overload, but it's completely free and you can move at your own pace. And all the information's there. You can do this. You just have to keep going every time you give up. You may have made a resolution and it may have already failed at this point because as I'm filming this, it is the 11th. And most people have by now or pretty close. So don't give up. Just keep going. Make this the year that is the last year that you decide I'm going to get out of debt.